Israel is a tiny country with a big economic story to tell. Every year it produces more startup companies than China, Japan, India, and the United Kingdom. What's behind this amazing story? Joining me now is Dan Senor of the Council on Foreign Relations and author of the new book, Startup Nation, the story of Israel's economic miracle. Dan, great to have you on the program.
Great to be with you, Maria.
Thank you so much for joining us. So let's start with the big question. Why is Israel so successful in terms of startups? It has the highest density of startups per capita in the world. You say some of the major reasons are military service and this culture of military.
Right. We said about 8 factors in the book that range from innovative immigration policies and assimilation policies. They bring in, 70 nationalities from around the world and integrate them in ways that we can learn from. The R&D, highest percentage of R&D spending, percentage of the economy for any country in the world. So all of these are important factors. But to your question about the military, it's one of the most important factors. Almost every single Israeli at age 18 goes into the military. Then they go to university. So they go to university at a completely different maturity level. In the military, they're subjected to this crucible leadership experience where at a young age they learn how to lead people, how to manage organizations, how to manage millions of dollars of equipment and assets, what it means to have lives on the line, not only their own lives but other people's, what it means to improvise every single day, make tough decisions with imperfect information. These skill sets are tailor-made for the startup scene. And what the Israeli economy has gotten very good at is the investors, the Israeli venture capital investors, and the leaders of companies in Israel know exactly what different military units lend which skill sets to the business world.
And you also talk about important cultural factors, the culture of questioning authority and a culture of the fact that failure is not viewed as an end point, but actually as a beginning. Talk about that.
We interviewed over 140 people, Israeli inventors and entrepreneurs, but also leaders of American companies who've done business in Israel. Google, Cisco, eBay, Intel. I mean, Cisco's bought 9 companies in Israel. They're looking to buy more. Google, some of its most amazing functions and products on its website were invented in Israel. So we talked to the leaders of these American companies, and they talk about this cultural issue. There's a tolerance for questioning authority, debating, challenging, probing, in a way that often puts Americans off. The leaders of Intel told us they had to start cross-cultural seminars for their executives because their executives would go to Israel, meet with these 25-year-old programmers, and the 25-year-olds would start pounding the executives from Intel with all these questions, and they said the first question they'd ask is, why are you my manager, why am I not your manager?
Israel has more companies on the NASDAQ than all European companies combined, a greater amount of venture capital spent per capita than any other country in the world. What can the U.S. learn from Israel? What lessons are transferable?
I think a few things. One, I think there's a lot we talk about in the book on immigration and assimilation. We argue that immigrants are the ultimate entrepreneurs. They're the ultimate risk takers. They come to a country, they start anew, they know how to face adversity, they know what it means to take real risk. And a country of immigrants is a country of entrepreneurs. And what Israel's done is really come up with some innovative ways to assimilate all of these newcomers. So we look at those. Certainly the way Israel creates this culture of R&D spending, not only spending a lot of money, but teaching people how to do it efficiently. The military piece, though, is enormously important. We tell this one story in the book. A junior officer from the United States Army comes back from Iraq, and he's had incredible experience. He's been a reconstruction czar, a security officer, a tribal negotiator in Fallujah. He's got all these entrepreneurial and leadership skills. He comes back from Iraq, and he's applying for a job at a major company in Silicon Valley, whose name I won't mention, and the corporate recruiter is listening to this junior officer describe all of his experience and listens patiently. At the end of the interview, the recruiter says, well, that's all very interesting, but have you ever had a real job? And we heard this story over and over and over from American military personnel, and we were struck when this book came out, the degree to which this has touched a nerve where the military and leaders in corporate America now want to look at the Israeli model and say, how can we get America's corporate leadership to be literate about the skill sets that our men and women are learning in the battlefield and how they're applicable to the business world, particularly over the next few years when we have to reintegrate tens of thousands of people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan into the economy.
Why are technology companies so prevalent in Israel? I mean, Cisco and Intel, you mentioned they have plants there. Both have bought many Israeli companies, as you say, and Google.
The entire emphasis in the sort of innovation entrepreneurial economy in Israel is on high-tech, information technology, biotech, medical device. The Israelis early on in about the 60s, when they came to the conclusion they were isolated from the Arab world, there was a massive boycott, economic boycott against Israel, coming from the whole Middle East. They weren't going to be able to export. It's a tiny country, so they'd have to have an export-oriented economy. They weren't going to be able to export to the region. So they knew they were going to have to export far away. If you know right away you're going to have to export far away, you're a tiny country, you're surrounded by enemies, you got to export small stuff. You can't export big, hard goods. But what's the quintessential small product or service? Information technology. So they made a decision decades before information technology was this hot sector that is where they were going to invest all their sort of export-oriented economic focus.
Really fascinating, and such innovation coming out of Israel. Dan, thank you very much.
Great to be with you.
Congratulations on the book.